Hey YouTube, what's going on? Hope you guys are doing well. Today's video is going to be a breakdown of the most recent and potentially final Halo 5 tournament. It was called the Halo 5 SEN/D Send-Off Tournament, hosted by Sentinels, a North American Esports organization that have now picked up the team of Frosty, Snakebite, Lethal, and Royal 2. So this was marketed as the biggest Halo 5. Oh, actually, this was marketed as the biggest online Halo tournament that the world has ever seen. I have no idea if that's factually correct or not. I haven't seen anyone say that it's not. It was actually a $30,000 tournament hosted by Sentinels. So the format of the tournament was there was 4 invited teams: Sentinels, obviously, Envy, Cloud9, and Inconceivables. If you're unfamiliar with who is on each of those rosters, then the graphics up on the screen. There's been a bit of movement, if you are familiar, between what you would have been seeing on the most recent Halo 5 Pro Series and what you're seeing now. Envy, for example, is composed of Sparty, Ola, Saiyan, and Trippy, where Ola was not playing in these series. Trippy has been taken from Sentinels, who he was playing with them in the Pro Series, and Saiyan has been taken from Inconceivables. So everyone's trying to play under the banner of the organization that they'll be representing in Infinite. So that was the 4 invited teams. It was a double elimination open bracket on Sunday for the prize pool, and the other 4 teams that got to compete in that double elimination bracket was actually 4 teams which qualified from a 32 team, I think it was double elimination bracket on the Saturday beforehand, and that was Falling Esports, FLYERS, Pittsburgh Knights, and KC Pioneers. You can see who's on each of those teams as well in the graphic. So besides playing for the glory of determining who is going to be the best team at the end of Halo 5's long-awaited life cycle, there was also, like I said, a $30,000 prize breakdown. First place taking away the lion's share of that $30,000, being $12,000 for the team, so $3,000 per player. Second place taking $6,000 home. Third place, $4,500. Fourth place, $3,000, all the way through to 8th place, taking $750 home each. Personally, I'd be happy with $750, but I'm glad to see for the guys that have stuck it out all this time that Halo 5's kind of been in a drought in terms of competition and real money if you compare it to other esports, that these guys, especially first, second, third, they finally get to walk away with a little bit of money. Alright, so jumping straight into winners bracket round 1, and the first game that we got to see was Envy versus Kansas City Pioneers. This is probably picked because I thought this was going to be the closest of the 4 series in that first winners bracket round. So I'll show the map pool on screen quickly if you want to have a look at that. Obviously, all series, both winners bracket and losers bracket, were best of 5. The grand finalists, if you came into the grand finals from losers, you would have to win 2 best of 5s, the way that it should be. Anywho, so going into game 1, Envy versus KCP on Truth Flag. KCP actually come out really hot and win this 3-0. I can't remember the time frame that it was in, but it was quite convincing from the Kansas City side. I think that this took everyone off guard a little bit, especially the casters who were backing Envy all the way from what I remember. Going into game 2, obviously KCP wanted to bring this momentum, but it didn't look like they could. It was tied 17 all in the first quarter of the game, and then around the 25 kill mark, Envy actually started pulling away. They got a couple unanswered 2 deads, which on a team this good allows you to get map control and start manipulating spawns the way you want it to a little bit, and the league kind of blew out. With the final score being 50-39. Spartan was the standout player in this game mode. He actually went double positive, 15 kills and 8 deaths, so that was a good look for him. Going into game 3, which is our Plaza Strongholds, KCP are actually the first team to put points on the board. They managed to get the first 16 points unanswered and actually got a very early trip cap, which was quickly broken. It was one of those loosey-goosey trip caps where they didn't really have kills, they just kind of went for it, and the opposition of Envy weren't in position to defend the trip cap when they pushed it. So they got an early trip cap, but quickly, by the 16-point mark, Envy actually started to turn the points around in their favor, and very quickly reverse the tide of the game and put KCP on a very solid trip cap with kills and map control, and they actually finished this game 100-21. Spartan again, main man for me in this. He actually went 16, 12 and 5, and that was because as you probably saw, he was the point man in a lot of these plays. He was the one applying pressure and living, which is why he had so many kill engagements, and he was obviously living very well as well. So unfortunately on the KCP side, Torlik had a really bad game. He went 3 and 10, which when you're on a spawn cycle on Plaza Strongholds, you got to feel for him. It's not an easy place to be. And then Envy actually closed the series out 3-1 on Oddball Fisher, going 150 to 115 in their favor. You'll notice that I don't like going over oddball games, and I'm never going to really break them down just because I don't find them enjoyable to watch or play. So oddball is that, I think, swing game type, the same way Control is in the COD, if anyone watches that. Just because I think players don't put as much attention to it as they do other game modes, because the game, it wasn't a staple to start the game, and people just it got added on and people treated it as such. Anywho, so that was winners bracket round 1. Envy, KCP, Envy coming out with the 3-1 victory. So that meant that the results of winners bracket round 1 in our Sentinels versus Falling Esports, Sentinels won that 3-1. KCP and Envy, we just went over. Then looking at Cloud9 versus Pittsburgh Knights, Cloud9 won that 3-0 quite convincingly. That was a truth flag. They won 3-0. Collie Slayer 50-43 in their favor, and Plaza Strongholds was 100-0 in their favor. So no real competition there. Inconceivables versus FLYERS. They won their truth flag 3-0. They won their Collie Slayer 50-38 and their Plaza Strongholds 100-52. So also not really much of a competition. Going into our winners bracket round 2, we got to see Cloud9 versus Inconceivables in the first series. Sentinels versus Envy's follows, and I'll go over that. So the games and the modes that we had here was Empire Strongholds, Rig Slayer, Echelon Oddball, Fathom Flag, and True Slayer in our 5-game series. Empire Strongholds, the game starts pretty back and forth early on, but around the second lot of power-ups, Inconceivables managed to snag both the Overshield and the Camo, which gives them time to develop a 58-31 lead. Bound then, around the next lot of power-ups, manages to get 2 or 3 kills, but his teammates are going around him while this is happening, and it makes the map a bit hectic. Penguin, who Bound kills, comes off spawn and kind of capitalizes on that hecticness of the map and gets a triple kill. Stella picks up the 4th one, which gives them a fresh 4 dead, as there are no trades in Inconceivable's favor. And that pretty much allows Cloud9 to just take full map control and finish the game out strong, going 100-87 at the end. Cloud9 get a 40-point spree. Then they take this momentum into Rig Slayer as much as they can. Game's actually pretty tied up at around mid-game, 22 all. Bound was, again, the player getting huge kills. He finishes the game 25-12. Renegade finishes the game 18-10-12 on the side of Cloud9. So both teams having standout players. However, Cloud9 actually managed to take this very narrowly, 50-47. Falcated's going to be left a little upset with his performance. 4 kills, 7 assists, and 11 deaths with only 1,400 damage. So Cloud9 actually takes an early 2-0 lead, but thankfully for Inconceivables, they managed to turn it around in Game 3. They start off in the Fisher Echelon with a pretty solid lead, and they maintain this, finishing the game mode overall 90-150 in Inconceivables' favor. 2-1 going into Fathom Flag, and then Cloud9 too strong, finish off with a 3-0 on the Fathom Flag, and putting Inconceivables in the losers bracket. Broadcast headed next to Sentinels versus Envy. I can't determine which is more of the grudge match. Is it Sentinels versus Envy at this point, or is it Sentinels versus Cloud9, given that Envy always had that rivalry throughout the main section of Halo 5 with this whole Tox squad, now known as the Sentinel squad, but Cloud9 have really taken over from what you would consider the core of the Envy roster and have become the main competitors as of late. So I don't know. I personally still consider the Envy rivalry the biggest of the rivalries, so I was excited to see this matchup. Our Empire Stronghold Sentinels put them on a trip cap early on at about the 18 all mark, which can't really be broken. And that was pretty much the end of the game. They get out of it at about the 95 point mark and manage to get a couple kills on a couple points on the side of Envy, but unfortunately, too little too late, and Sentinels close their first map out 100 to 35. Going into Rig Strongholds, Envy get off to a really strong start, securing the sniper for Trippy, and Sentinels can't put a kill on the board until Envy are already up 10 to 0. They try and fight back at this point with some nice kills from Frosty and his trusty sniper mid-game. However, it's not enough, and Envy really pull away after another camo grab from Pistola, trading out the end of the game about 10 kills in the favor of Sentinels. Meanwhile, Envy got the final 30. Lethal had a really rough game, going 4 and 15 with less than 1,000 damage, which is not something you see very often out of Lethal. And Envy closed that game out 50 to 31 in their favor, making the series 1-all. Going into Echelon Ball goes in the favor of Envy again, 150 to 140, much closer than that Slayer performance. Fathom Flag goes in the favor of Sentinels, 3-2, also incredibly close. And then we go into a game 5 on True Slayer, which is what we all love to see. It's my personal favorite for a game 5, just because there is not really those power weapons that can really take over a game. You just got to fight for that camo, and it's obviously in a very hard spot to get. So game 5, it's very close, around the 10 kill mark each on both sides, until Envy go 10 for 3 on trades, with 6 or 7 unanswered kills still in this, first third of the game, and that honestly blows the game wide open. This is somewhat similar to how they started that Rig Strongholds. Just puts Sentinels in a really uncomfortable position, knowing that they have to come back and they have to get full map control and pretty much do the same thing to Envy. So it allows Envy to really fundamentally manage the map the way that they all know how to, especially on an easy map like Truth, and they rotate side to side, slowly just trading out kills, not getting another 3 or 4 dead, but just getting a 2 for 1 trade, or a 3 for 1 trade, or a 3 for 2 trade, but gradually extending that lead throughout the game, which really ultimately puts them in a position at about 37 to 21, where Envy can trade 2 for 1 for the rest of the game, and they can still win. So that's pretty much what they end up doing, and the game closes out 50 to 35 in Envy's favor. So 2 dominant performances in the Slayer. Slayers really were not Sentinel's strong point throughout this tournament. So Envy stay in the winners finals to take on Cloud9, and Sentinel drop down into the losers bracket after that loss to Envy. So with those 2 results, with Cloud9 beating Inconceivables and with Sentinels falling short to Envy, we had our winners brackets finalists, Cloud9 as the red team taking on Envy as the blue team. The games and maps for this were Eden Oddball, Regret Slayer, Collie Flag, Rig Strongholds, and Plaza Slayer. Now the Eden Oddball, very close, but I'm not going to go over it. There was 150 to 139 in Cloud9's favor, giving them a 1-0 lead early on and taking that Oddball, probably the uncomfortable game mode for them. Going into game 2, Regret Slayer, Cloud9 were up by about 5 kills, most of the game, and they actually maintained this lead for the majority of the game, finishing 50 to 45, so they just had a 5 kill buffer that Envy couldn't manage to break throughout the whole game. Game 3 actually turned out to be the final game. Cloud9 capped the first 2 flags in under 80 seconds, which against the likes of Envy is kind of surprising, something you would expect to see Cloud9 do against my team, for example. This is, a Game 3 situation. They only need 1 more flag to close it out, and Envy, they have to be quick if they're going to do anything. Unfortunately, Cloud9 actually finished this game in 2 minutes and 50 seconds for a very quick 3-0 sweep. Not the winners bracket final that we were hoping for, but the informed Cloud9 taking on the Envy squad, who haven't really played together that much. Ola, who's just come back, Sparty, who's been playing with another team, was somewhat expected. Although like I said, from a viewing perspective, it would have been good to see more. So Envy knocked down to the losers bracket. So with Envy knocked down to the losers bracket, that leaves us in a winners bracket situation that looks a bit like this. I'm not going to go over all of the losers bracket games, just because otherwise this video will never end. All I wanted to do was highlight the main story of the day, and that was FLYERS. So FLYERS lost their first match against Inconceivables 3-0. It was pretty inconspicuous, and there wasn't much challenge on the part of FLYERS against Inconceivables. Then, interestingly enough, FLYERS go on to have the competition of all competitions. Quite possibly the best losers run I've ever seen in any Halo 5 tournaments that I've watched. So all I have, and all that I'm going to go over, is the maps, who they versed, and I guess some of the stats from FLYERS losers bracket run. So to spoil it and to tell you the end result before we went through all of it, FLYERS actually make the entire losers bracket run. So they get knocked down in winners bracket round 1 against Inconceivables. They come up against Pittsburgh Knights, who were knocked down by Cloud9 in the winners bracket round 1. And that's actually a 3-2 against Pittsburgh Knights. So FLYERS were the runners-up in the Saturday, and they lost to KCP. I'm not sure where Pittsburgh Knights came, but obviously FLYERS beat them. So Pittsburgh Knights were either 3rd or 4th. And this actually went to a Game 5. And the Game 5 closed out only 50-46 in FLYERS' favour. So it was a pretty close game. The maps are on the screen, as you can see. Oddball Fisher, True Slayer, Fathom Flag, Eden Strongholds, and Rig Slayer. The series looks like it was pretty back and forth. And overall, looking at on the stats of FLYERS' side, positive 30 out of Super CC across the entire series, and positive 27 out of Commonly throughout the entire series. The only one going negative in that series being Ryanoob. So they obviously outslayed Pittsburgh. That's probably came down to that Eden Strongholds, where it's 100-21 victory. So there's probably a bit of outslaying there, but overall in the series, it looks like they outslayed quite heavily to only just narrowly escape that 3-2 win in their losers bracket round 1. So they advance. Now, this is where it starts getting interesting. They come up against Sentinels in losers bracket round 2. Everyone's backing Sentinels, as you would. I don't think FLYERS have ever beaten Sentinels, but Lethal is, I guess, the mystery card in this package, because he hasn't competed in much H5 for the last 2 years. So they come up against Sentinels, and they take a early 2-0 deficit. So they're down 2-0. Both of the maps were incredibly close. As you can see, Collie Flag goes 3-2, narrowly missing out on the win on that. And then Regret Slayer even closer with a 50-48 win also to Sentinels. So both games very winnable from the side of FLYERS. And then they do what you would not think Sentinels would ever allow themselves to do, especially against, especially in the last H5 tournament and on a losers bracket side of things, and Sentinels actually get reverse swept by FLYERS. It starts off with a Rig Strongholds 100-62, Eden Oddball 150-52. That game was not even competitive at all. Looking at the stats, looking at the stats, Super CC went negative 12 in that game, and they still managed to get away with the victory. Commonly going +9, Ryanoob going only +1, and Envor going 24 and 15, so +9. Overall in that series, Ryanoob and Super CC end up negative, and Envor really carries the throne. They're going positive 15 and Commonly going positive 5 overall in the series. So that's an incredible feat to reverse sweep Sentinels in their own tournament. I think that was what everyone would consider to be the upset of the tournament. But then their run isn't done. They go on to verse KCP. KCP actually beat them in the Saturday tournament to secure first. So momentum is in FLYERS' favour, obviously. But KCP, I'm sure they're thinking the same thing Sentinels were thinking. They're sitting pretty. FLYERS come out and 3-0 KCP. 3-0 them, 100-54 in Empire Strongholds, 50-38 in True Slayer, and 150-147 in that Fisher Oddball. And that Fisher Oddball came down to the last seconds of the game. So clutch that FLYERS managed to finish it out there, because you never know what happens. Then KCP could come back, win Game 4, and then we're in a Game 5 situation, and it depends who clutches up the most. So good on them for finishing that series out 3-0. That really stamped their dominance over KCP to end Halo 5 here. And yeah, then all of a sudden, they've beaten Pittsburgh Knights, they've reverse swept Sentinels, they've 3-0'd KCP. Now they're coming up against Envy, who's just lost to Cloud9 in the winners finals, and again, Flyers beat Envy 3-2. So this is a back and forth series. Flyers lose game 1, truth flag. Looking at the stats on that truth flag, it looks like it was a pretty even game in terms of slays. Commonly went 10-8, Envor 8-9, Ryan Oob 7-9, and Super CC went 5-9. So slightly in Envy's favour, which is how you can see that they obviously got away with the flags as a result of it. Flyers kicked back with a 50-35 win on Rig Slayer, followed by another win on Plaza Strongholds, putting him 2-1 up, and then losing the Echelon oddball, but coming back and winning the Regret Slayer at the end. Big performance again out of Envor in this one, going positive 14. Ryan Oob, unfortunately, negative 17 throughout that series. But yeah, Envor, to me, from what I've seen against the two big teams where they've really needed to step up, Envor has been the guy in against Sentinels and against Envy in those game 5s to drop numbers. And in those series, in both series against Envy and Sentinels, Envor went positive 14 and positive 15 across the entire series. And no one else in his team managed to get even double-digit positives. So, yeah, Envor playing a big part in this losers bracket run. And then if I look at the overall losers bracket run, who really had an impact, and it's all pretty even. So, commonly went plus 40 overall, Envor plus 50, Ryan Oob, unfortunately, negative 24 overall, and Super CC plus 47. So I would be interested to see if you swap Ryan Oob with someone else. Obviously, there's more to it than the kills and the deaths. I haven't factored in assists or damage, and we're not looking at the plays they're making, but from a purely statistical point of view, it would be interesting if you had a heavier Slayer in place of Ryan Oob, how this team would have fared coming up into the grand finals. So there you go. Hats off to Flyers. They definitely had multiple upsets. They were the talk of the town when it came to this tournament, and they've got eyes looking at them going into Infinite, I guess. So after that excellent losers bracket run, Flyers have to come up against the likes of Cloud9 in the grand finals, obviously having to win 2 best of 5s to secure themselves first place in this $30,000 tournament. Cloud9 had only lost 1 map against Inconceivables up to this point. They'd 3-0'd Pittsburgh Knights in the winners round 1, and they'd 3-0'd Envy in the winners finals. So obviously difficult opposition to be coming against here. Looking at our map pool, we had Fathom Flag, Truth Slayer, Eden Strongholds, followed up by game 4 and 5 if we made it there of Fisher Oddball and Collie Slayer. So going into it, Fathom Flag, Cloud9 come out hot on this game, putting a flag in the first minute thanks to the likes of Penguin and an early double kill. After a continued battle for map control after this, Flyers managed to put Cloud9 a fresh 3 dead and capture their own flag, tying the game up 1-1 at about the 9-minute 30 mark. Rhino then snags the second lot of railgun and camo, while Cloud9 is scrambling in their base after this counter flag cap from Flyers, and Flyers use this, capitalize on the hecticness to pull a second flag, which gets within an inch of capturing, but unfortunately Cloud9 have that clutch factor. They stop them putting that second flag in and potentially putting themselves on the back foot early on in the game. So nonetheless, Flyers are still the next to strike even after this setback, and after another 4 dead situation, they run and cap a flag without any contest. As you would expect, after a fresh 4 dead, it's very difficult to get off spawn and contest, especially if a team like Flyers, they're ready, we know how to play Fathom. You wait for the overextenders. If you can stop that first overextender, most of the time you're going to guarantee that flag cap. So that's 2-1 in Flyers' favour. Penguin then goes and gets the third lot of camo and rail, but gets burned. That's a saving grace from the side of Flyers, but nonetheless, it's not enough. And with some solid teamwork, Cloud9 managed to punch in the second and third flag pretty much back to back, and put themselves 1-0 up in the series. So the stats for this game look fairly even slaying-wise, as you would expect from a close 3-2 game. But Penguin, for me, shining player. going almost double positive, and obviously being a key factor in their flag cap. So that's Cloud9 up 1-0. Now, we went into a Truth Slayer for Game 2, which starts off even trades all across the board, putting in about 4 all. It was pretty much 1 for 1 for 1 for 1 trade, which included a camo grab from blue team, which is instantly burnt by Renegade. The next lot of slays goes heavily in favor of Cloud9 for a magnitude of 4 to 1, which spawns most of the members of FLYERS in the blue bubble, and sets up Eco for an easy triple kill, putting FLYERS down by 8 kills by the time the next camo pops, which Eco then goes and secures. Cloud9 continues to outmaneuver and outclass the boys on FLYERS, going into mid-game, leading to a 15 kill advantage that continually gets pushed further. Cloud9 showing superior teamwork, but also individually outshooting each of the players on FLYERS. The level of control is demonstrated as Eco managed to get a killing frenzy by the 43 to 26 mark, and regardless of a late 6 unanswered kills from FLYERS, the deficit is too much, and Cloud9 take the win 50 to 35, posting a 15 kill difference on the final scoreboard. Looking at the stats from this game, Eco, obviously the standout player, with a killing frenzy. You know that he's putting up good numbers on the board, and we weren't disappointed. He went 16 kills, 6 assists, and 8 deaths. Obviously more than or double positive with some assists in there. And Stella and Penguin both having 12 assists, so very solid game out of Cloud9. On the side of FLYERS, no one went positive, as you would expect, going negative 15 overall, and 8 kills seemed to be the cursed number, with everyone other than Ryanoob, who managed to get 11, not being able to get past that point on the leaderboard. So looking at it from the side of FLYERS, you're thinking they're 2-0 down, they're versing Cloud9, who have only lost 1 map, they have to reverse sweep, and then they have to win another 3 out of 5 maps to take away this championship. So it's not looking good, and you can imagine the mental situation that they've been in. I guess in their back pocket, they are thinking that they did just reverse sweep Sentinels not too long ago, and they've had grueling Game 5s for this whole tournament. So if anyone can do it at this stage, it's them, and hopefully, and they were probably thinking that as well. Regardless, difficult situation to be in. And going into Eden Strongholds, map 3, the mental effect knowing this, plus getting put on an early triple cap in this game, makes it a real uphill battle in my opinion. And Cloud9 continue to maintain map control over FLYERS, whilst also winning their individual fights. However, given the poor kill and map control situation, this doesn't stop FLYERS from breaking the trip cap and putting some points on the board themselves, as the score was about 32 to 38 in Cloud9's favour. When the third set of power-ups pops, Eco grabs rockets and overshield and manages to kill 3 members of FLYERS off of spawn who are trying to cap the catwalk stronghold. Cloud9 then, being the efficient team that they are, they use this and put FLYERS under total control for a second time in the game, and they use this to quite substantially extend their lead, getting a 40-point run off of it, and close it out off the back of more power-up control by none other than Eco, again, who grabs himself, this time it's the 4th lot of camo and overshield. He grabs the overshield and then uses the overshield to grab the camo, and get kills all along the way, whilst keeping FLYERS on a disrupted spawn cycle. So a lack of power-up control really hurt FLYERS in this game, but that's because they're always under the pressure. Spawns are always being pressured by the likes of Cloud9, and it's difficult while you're being scored against, whilst being shot, to think, how am I going to set up for this power-up, which really gives Cloud9 the luxury of figuring that out and making sure they get those power-ups and then compounding their lead. So another standout performance from Eco on this map. Envor and Ryanoob, on the other hand, were really struggling, both going -9 with 7 kills and 16 deaths each. So if we look at the overall series stats from the grand finals, unfortunately it was a quick 3-0. The boys from FLYERS had not disappointed up until this point, but they're coming up against what was obviously and is the best Halo 5 team at the end of the game. They've had the longest day with the longest series you could ever imagine, so you can't blame them too much. You'd love to see what could have happened if they had versus Cloud9 maybe 2 series earlier. I don't know what time of the night this was for them to be playing. I imagine it was pretty late, but nonetheless, Eco being the MVP of the grand finals, putting up 45 kills, 19 assists and 29 deaths over the entire series, going plus 16. That's plus 7 more than anyone else in the lobby, and also putting down the most damage. Not surprising given what the double positive performance on Truth and the more than double positive performance on that Eden Strongholds that we just saw. Stella posting +1, Renegade +8 with some good damage, and Penguin being the stable player that he is and the staple in this team. Most assists and least deaths in the lobby, so they kind of go hand in hand. If you're living the longest, you're shooting the most things, and therefore getting the most assists. So unfortunate series of events, I guess, for Envor and Rhino, both going -13 in that series. But commonly, he did his best to keep his team in it, going 33 and 37 overall with pretty close to 5,700 damage. So equaling the damage output of just about everyone on Cloud9. We just really needed to see a bit more out of Envor and Rhino, and this series probably could have been a lot closer. So just like that, Cloud9 end up taking that $12,000 prize home and securing themselves the win in probably the last ever Halo 5 event. Well, that's what it was marketed as anyway. FLYERS, huge congratulations to them. Really put on a show for everyone watching at home. Take home that second place prize of $6,000 US, third place going to Envy, etc., etc. So that's it for Halo 5 potentially, probably for the NA side, definitely for the Australian side where I'm from. If you've enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more of it, then please subscribe, like the video, share it around. I'd be interested in doing this going into Infinite a bit more, so if you guys have any feedback or comments, then let me know. And yeah, thanks for watching. It's been a blast. Peace out.
I don't give a damn cause I'm on route, coming for the crown, tell me who I gotta run through, I was in the room with the 1-2, did it myself, made it happen cause I want to, people always tell me what they gon' do, I don't sweat about it, I just move like a boss move, man, it's really been long, dude, but I'm here now and there's nowhere they can run to, on the money.